In 1978, an Australian pilot in training took what was supposed to be a short routine flight, but never made it to his destination. In his last known transmission, the pilot made claims of seeing a strange aircraft in the sky before he seemingly vanished into thin air. Today we discuss the eerie details behind the disappearance of Frederick Valentich. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the supernatural. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
Welcome back, Task Force, to Season 5.
Yep.
Imagine how confusing that would be. People are like, what?
We had a 4-year Season 1, a 2-week Season 2, and now we're Season 5, baby.
People lose their mind. Where was Season 3 and 4? How'd I miss it?
Gotta find it.
I'm excited. Aviation always excites me.
Okay. You don't want to see this man next to a plane. He's very excited.
Okay, very excited. Potential aliens. I'm all about it.
No one said aliens, but I'm glad you brought it up for me.
Come on. Look, a pilot, they go missing. They saw some strange things. As main theory number one, aliens.
100%.
You know,
100%.
Obviously, he could be flying over a restricted air zone and could have been shot out of the sky, or, jets could have been scrambled to bring him down. And then he was, captured or something like that. But, I mean, if you're going to if this was a TV show and that's how the beginning started off, I'm like, this episode was about aliens.
Yeah, that's true.
And you're going to it's either going to be about aliens or you're going to convince me why it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christian, our guy in the chair, I feel like we've collectively turned Alfredo into that man from the History Channel that just says aliens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we fried your little brain.
Dude, I'll grow my hair out and then get my hands up and just, spread my fingers out and be like,
But yeah, no, I also love the visual of this man dogfighting a couple of scrambled jets in his Cessna. But this case is wildly interesting. It takes place in Australia back in the 70s, and we're going to get into all the details. I mean, he himself was an alien enthusiast. And so there's a really interesting angle with that. But before we dive in, I want to give a huge shout out to our task force member over on patreon.com/redweb. We got Lizzie Hall, Broman, Brett O'Mura, Azrael, and of course, Alex Tuck. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. If you want to know what you get on patreon.com/redweb, all sorts of exclusive content, ad-free, everything. We'll talk about it more at the end because I'm very excited to talk about the Founders merch, store.roosterteeth.com. That's right. I wrote it down on a Post-it note so I remember the URL. We've got a merch store, and the Founders merch is available as like the launch stuff just for August, but we have a bunch of other things too. Fredo, this is news to you. I wanted to surprise you with it.
Okay.
The sippy cup of knowledge, the thing that you suckle on.
Yeah.
Got to get that knowledge. It's a custom product, so it takes a lot of effort to make.
Right.
And
it was a pain.
It was a pain. And so in lieu of the cup coming back, because I want to work on that, we've got the sippy mug of knowledge.
Ooh.
Yeah.
For the people that prefer the finer things in life.
Yes. A little champagne out of your mug.
Yeah. See, look, what you're going to have here is everyone with their cross-eyed at Task Force HQ, like sitting down with their legs crossed, sipping on their sippy cup of knowledge with their little blocks and the shapes. And like, that's me. I'm in that group. Okay. Don't worry. I'm there with you.
It's him in a room with mirrors, Task Force.
And
it's just him.
when you hear the classical music down the hall and there's like a record player, you know what I mean? And you go in there and there's like velvet lining and everyone's dressed up and they're like, yes, with their pinkies out. That is the sippy mug of knowledge.
Yeah. They got those signet rings on their pinkies. They're hanging out. They're sipping whatever.
Still oscillating though. Like still.
100%. When you're in the Task Force HQ, you need to have at least two things crossed at all times.
That's very true.
Could be anything. All right. Well, with that madness out of the way, I want to talk now about Frederick Valentich. Again, I'm so excited to talk about this one. Much more lighthearted than our recent episodes, and a lot more to talk about. So I'm eager to get your thoughts. So again, let's wind back the clock and let me take you back to October 21st, 1978. We have a pilot in training, Frederick Valentich, who was flying alone and headed to King Island in Tasmania, Australia. Now, I hear my Midwestern folks here in the Americas saying, Kings Island, I love Cincinnati. No, different place.
Oh, we have one too.
What? There's one in SF?
No. I'm just saying we have one in the U.S.
Oh, yeah. This one's got roller coasters. Much more exciting, I'm sure.
No, we don't have Kings Alley. We just have Oakland, and you don't want to go there.
Different level of excitement, you know?
Yep, it definitely is.
So Tasmania, for those of you who don't know, is an island state off the southern coast of Australia. It's basically due south of Melbourne, Australia. A beautiful city, by the way. Now, he took off in a rented Cessna 182. It's a small four-seater, single-engine light airplane that we have an image for you. If you prefer, go ahead and de-spoilerify that for yourself so you can take a look at what this plane might have looked like. Task Force, these images, as always, will be on our social or now back on our YouTube video version of the podcast.
Oh, wait, is this just a photo that we just pulled up, right?
Oh, yeah, that's not his.
Okay. I was like, this looks like a great photo for the 70s. Yeah, that's a little Cessna. Little private plane. Looks cool.
Yeah. So that's what he's working with. And he left from Moorabbin Airport, south of Melbourne, at around 6:19 p.m. After obtaining, of course, a meteorological briefing on the weather conditions, he then submitted his flight plan. Everything was above board and as expected. Now, this 125 nautical mile trip, or 200 kilometers, was estimated to take about 41 minutes to get to Cape Otway, and then an additional 28 minutes from there to King Island, with fuel enough to last for about 300 minutes of flight. So he was well equipped, planned ahead, ample fuel, all looks good.
I like that we know that, because then that gets that theory of like maybe it wasn't sufficiently planned or something like that. That's out of the way for me.
Right. Mishandling of things, all gone. So, a little background on Valentich. He had been flying for about 2 years. He accumulated 150 hours of training to then one day hopefully become a commercial pilot. He did have a bumpy track record, though. His records show that he had at least failed a few tests, though his Class 4 instrument rating authorized him to fly, but exclusively on clear nights, which this was. So as long as it's not raining, super overcast, what have you, he's equipped and knows his instruments well enough to fly at night.
I'll be honest, it's kind of terrifying to just give people, I mean, you could train and get a pilot license. It's still terrifying that we just kind of let people do that, you know?
People just flying around.
Just flying around. Obviously, there's, you go through a lot of training and certification and all that kind of stuff, but just don't kind of...
Some people can't merge on the highway. I don't really...
That's what... Yes. So it's so little... I mean, obviously, it takes so much more to become a pilot and to actually be able to, like, fly on your own. But you can do it.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. Though, I knew a few friends, because my background is aerospace, aeronautical engineering, and a lot of my friends went off to become pilots in hopes of becoming astronauts and all sorts of different paths. And
damn, that's
it's
cool.
very interesting. I took a flight test engineering course where I was able to actually get my hands on the yoke for a little bit of flight time, but it definitely is a very thorough process. You can't just stumble into a plane and become a pilot. It does take a lot of high-level training. So I would generally trust somebody who makes it all the way through, especially to commercial pilot levels. That is a lot of hours.
Do commercial pilots make good money?
They do, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Because also, they're traveling a lot.
They're traveling a lot. They do have seasons off, like months off, I think around 3 months off. But it is pretty grueling as far as constantly traveling, a lot of training going into it. And I think there's actually just a global need for pilots right now. Because of all the training necessary, yeah.
How many years does it take to become a pilot?
That I don't know. It's more about flight hours and passing tests and certifications. But Christian, I'm curious if you can whip up that answer by chance.
To become an airline pilot, you just need to hit a certain amount of hours, which is 1,500, and it sounds like the average is about 2 years.
Dang, 1,500 hours.
Yeah.
I could have done that 15 times over if I wasn't playing video games.
All of your Rainbow Six turned to pilot knowledge. You'd
Dude,
be the best.
I would be
Maverick.
a pilot 2 times if you just took my siege hours.
Honestly, yeah. But coming back to Valentich, he did have a bumpy track record despite his training and some of his certifications. Again, he failed multiple tests. In addition to that, he had gotten in trouble for flying into restricted airspace on 2 different occasions. And once he flew directly into a cloud. I don't know the decision making into that. I don't know the specific situation, but I will say flying into a cloud is very dangerous because you then have to heavily rely on your instrumentation because you can so quickly get disoriented when flying in the air. So it's not something that's recommended.
Oh, so is that something that like pilots just try to avoid at all costs? Because I've been in, a plane where, like a big commercial plane traveling and it's just like, oh, it's cloudy as hell. I can't see anything.
Yeah, it depends. And again, this is me it's peripheral knowledge. I don't want to speak with authority here. But I have watched a regrettable amount of flight cabin hours of just kind of watching pilots fly. When it's big cumulonimbus storm clouds, they do tend to air between them and avoid flying directly into them. But obviously, as you're coming up and down, you can penetrate varying amounts of clouds because you have so many tools, radar, and things to maintain visuals.
Yeah.
You have comms. But
essentially, there's a bunch of lanes in the sky.
Yes. And if you are sufficiently trained on your instrumentation, you should have the confidence to do it. But it depends on the airplane. I mean, he's dealing with something very small. So flying into a cloud, not great.
Got it.
Now, it's unclear exactly why Valentich wanted to go to King Island that night. Some people claim that he had planned to visit friends there. Others claim that he had simply planned to go get crayfish, or as we say, crawfish. A little fishing trip, as it were. Either way, he hadn't informed King Island Air Traffic Control of his intention to fly there, which went against standard protocol. I'm a little confused personally because I know he did establish a flight plan back in Melbourne, but I'm surprised that then King Island hadn't been made aware of that. Now at 7:06 p.m., as Valentich was flying over the Bass Strait, he radioed a man named Steve Roby of Melbourne Flight Service Unit, and he asked him if there was any Air Force traffic in the area. Suffice to say that there was none. Now, the reason he asked is because he saw what he called 4 bright lights about 1,000 feet or 300 meters above his plane, and he could not identify the aircraft that he believed to be the source of these lights. In fact, he indicated that these 4 lights almost looked like landing lights. If you've ever seen an airplane come in at night, it almost like they have these big high beams on, just to help see the runway and things. And as he's continuing to radio back to Melbourne, he's describing his situation. Whatever this thing was, it was moving towards him, and in his final radio communications, which are actually recorded, you can find those, I think, online, he reported, quote, "It seems to me that he's playing some sort of game. He's flying over me 2-3 times at a time at speeds I could not identify." Valentich also claimed that the plane appeared to be, quote, floating, noting also, quote, "It's a long shape," as he was trying to kind of fly around it. And then in further describing this UAP, this unidentified aerial phenomenon, he said, quote, "It's got a green light and sort of metallic, like it's all shiny on the outside." Valentich then went silent for 5 seconds before reacting with, "It's just vanished." Minutes later, the aircraft appeared yet again, and this time, Valentich reported problems with his engine, saying, quote, "This engine is rough idling. I've got it set at 23, 24, and the thing is coughing." And in that quote, he says 23, 24, that would be the RPMs probably. The Cessna tends to idle in that kind of range. So that's standard cruise speed. I think his altitude, I believe, if I remember correctly, Christian, was around 4,000 feet, maybe just shy, maybe just over.
Around there, yeah.
So this thing would then be about 5,000 feet total altitude, 1,000 feet above him. So Roby, after hearing this, then asked Valentich what his intentions were. So they're talking back and forth pretty consistently.
Yeah.
He's describing to Roby what he's seeing, and Roby's asking a few things back. And he says, well, what are your intentions here? Because you see this plane that we're not aware of. What do you want to do? Valentich responds with, quote, "My intentions are to go to King Island. Melbourne, that strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. 22 seconds of open microphone. It is hovering, and it's not an aircraft. Records then indicate that there were 17 seconds of open static microphone, basically Valentich broadcasting no vocals before the transmission then ceased. But before communications were fully lost, flight services recorded a strange metallic clicking or scraping noise. And when I listened back to this recording, I say this half in jest, but also because it sounded so accurate, it almost sounded like if you've ever stirred a protein shake in a glass cup, how the spoon kind of clicks around the sides and scrapes a little bit,
Yeah.
and it's thicker. It almost sounded like that because it was very strange. I couldn't fully identify what that sound might have been.
only buff scientists are gonna get that one.
You know what?
You know when you stir protein in a glass cup, even then, like,
It's very specific.
but I know it because there's been times it's like, I don't got any shaker cups. I got to
Yeah.
glass. Yeah.
I just imagine him now going, man, do you think that's an alien up there? Clink, 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 clink. Tang. Space's drink, or whatever the tagline was. So Valentich, to end the transmission there, 17 seconds of open microphone before cutting off, and he never made it to King Island, and he was never seen again. So this spurred, as you can imagine, an investigation of ground, air, water, all searching for what might have happened to the pilot Valentich.
This feels like just like an episode out of like Twilight Zone or something.
Yeah.
Very like eerie, not like super in your face, but like low touch kind of ambient type horror.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all for it.
You know, there's something on the wing.
Yeah, it reminds me of like something that you'd see in the beginning of like a Fringe episode or something like that.
Yeah.
That also reminds me for I say this for the task force, but I think Christian and Trevor as well. But it just reminds me because of like all the horror stuff that we've been doing, lately with like Movie Club.
Yeah.
If anyone is looking for an ambient type horror game, there is a game that came out called Still Wakes the Deep. And it's kind of like, it's a psychological story driven horror game. It's the best way to put it is it's The Thing on an oil rig.
Oh, that game. Have you played that?
No, I'm going to.
I've never
I've
seen
heard
this.
good things.
I've heard really good things about it. And then
What about
also,
Subnautica? Is it like that?
it's more story driven
Okay.
than open world. Yeah, it's very story driven. And then also, just because we're talking TV shows, there is a TV show that I just randomly stumbled across that I don't think anyone's seen, but the people that have seen it enjoy it very much. And I have blown through a season and a half, and the second season is coming out in like September, the end of September. But the best way to describe that is a horror drama mystery Lost.
What's it called?
It's called From.
From.
Yeah. So those are some good tidbits because it's just like the whole like ambient of like the plane disappearing and the subtleties put me in that mindset of like, oh, like here's a good game that gives off that ambiance, and here's a good show that gives off that kind of like eerie, dreary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got Harold Perrineau from Lost.
From Lost, yeah.
Ooh. Well, I just want to say we're just another step closer to the video game podcast about mysteries.
Yeah, true. That's true.
But that game looks amazing.
Yeah,
Still Wakes the Deep, and I still need to play Subnautica. That the thalassophobia of it all is eerie, but I kind of want to indulge.
Yeah, it's good horror ambiance stuff.
Yeah. So the investigation is unfolding, and at least 8 ships and even an Orion surveillance aircraft covered 1,000 square miles, but found no trace of him. 2,600 square kilometers, if you prefer. Now, we've heard of many commercial airlines go missing over the ocean. It's like finding the tiniest needle in the largest haystack.
I don't like the sound of that.
Yeah. Very cross your fingers and hope type of situation, unfortunately.
But the chances are very low, right? Isn't it? You have worse chances driving a car.
I don't know about the odds, but I do know that if anything is found, it's usually wreckage and somewhere much further away because of currents. You got to hope things float if it lands in the ocean.
Oh, God.
Otherwise, you got to scan the bottom, and it's technologically fascinating, but as an event, mortifying for sure.
Yeah.
So the search ended on October 25th, 1978. That would be just 4 days after the incident. Though routine ships were told to perhaps keep an eye out just in case they saw anything while doing typical things like commerce and travel through the area. The Department of Transport investigated the disappearance but could not find or identify a cause for the crash, and instead said that they presumed the crash was fatal. Weather conditions that night were clear and ideal for flying, but we're going to talk a lot more about the conditions in the theories section. The Cessna had enough fuel to fly 500 miles, 804 kilometers, which was plenty for the 125-mile journey. Nearly 5 years later, on May 16, 1983, a Cessna cowl cap was interestingly found. This is the protective cover that goes over the engine. When you look down the barrel of the plane, you see the propeller, and right behind that is kind of this fairing. That's what the cowl is. That is what was discovered on the west coast of Flinders Island. This is nearly 250 miles or 400 kilometers of ocean away. If you're looking at Tasmania, King Island is just off the northwest coast, and Flinders Island is just off the northeast coast. So, grand scheme of things, not too far away. So it's of interest for sure. And in fact, there was a piece of a serial number on this part.
I was about to ask, how do we know that this was? Yeah, okay.
Well, we don't know it was his. Serial numbers are definitely super helpful to identify if it was or was not. But the way I understand it is part of the serial code could be seen. And that part meant that it was in the same run or the same range of serial numbers as Valentich's plane. So the odds are decent that it is part of his plane, but it's not confirmed. It could just be a sister plane that was manufactured somewhere in a similar window to his, if that makes sense.
Got it.
So coming back to Roby for a second before we go into the theories, he was a pilot and an air traffic controller, and he was the one, obviously, who last spoke with Valentich. He does not believe it was the same plane. This part, he doesn't believe it to be Valentich's, and this is what he told the Herald Sun. Quote, "If it was much closer to the area where he went down, you would consider it, but it's an extremely long way to the point I discounted it." End quote. Now, Christian, I am curious, can we find what the cowl of a Cessna 182 is made of so we can kind of look at its buoyancy and see if it's possible it floated? Otherwise, if this is a sinkable level item, I'm inclined to believe that the guy who was watching the aircraft on radar and talking to the guy might be more accurate.
You're asking about the cowl flaps in particular?
Yeah, the cowl that was found, does it float? Could it have floated from a crash site to Flinders Island?
Just doing quick reading. It seems like the plane itself is mostly aluminum alloy. There are some parts, such as the engine cowling nose bowl and wingtips. So it doesn't mention the cowl cap specifically, but those are made of fiberglass or thermoplastic material.
Yeah.
I can try to see if I can find that specific part what it would be made out of, but I'm not sure if I will. But at the very least, we know that some of it is made out of non-metal.
Gotcha. And while you looked into that, I did just want to pull up just a generic photo of a Cessna Skyline 182 cowl, just so Fredo, you can see what that looks like. Obviously, this is just a random one and it's not broken, but that gets you an idea of what I'm talking about as far as the plane part.
Ooh, okay. I was thinking more of the nose. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of the nose, just minus the prop at the very front.
Wait, is this? Oh, a model aircraft. I'm like, damn, $30. How the hell? Let's start building the plane. What are we doing?
Honestly, I didn't see that it was phoenixmodel.com. I just saw the image.
I saw the image and the price.
It's 100 grams.
What the hell?
It's an interesting discovery, and it's as much as was able to be found as far as what we know right now. But with that said, we gotta dive into the theories, and of course, you know where we're starting. Believers theorize that Frederick Valentich saw a UFO while flying that night, and that he might have been abducted, hence his disappearance. It would certainly answer why he saw something that night, why he and his plane were never found. But again, we're talking about that tiny needle in a huge haystack. If he did go down, my personal opinion is it's gonna be hard to find. So I don't think it fully answers it.
Yeah, good luck.
Now, interestingly, another point in the column for the UFO believers here is that Valentich was not the only person who saw strange lights that night. In fact, according to Unsolved Mysteries, an anonymous witness reported seeing lights while his family was heading home that evening. Here's what he said, quote, "I looked up and I saw this long green light about 1,000 or 2,000 feet above the aircraft. So we sat there and watched it for a few seconds, and the green light crept closer to the plane. I said, that plane is coming down pretty steep. It's on a 45-degree angle, I said. I think it's going to crash." End quote. So we got a man that saw this whole thing go down.
That is wild. Like, it's cool that, like, someone was like, yeah, I was there. I mean, obviously you got to take take their word into account, but
Sure.
How often do you get an eyewitness? I actually, come to think of it, we don't really get many eyewitnesses.
No, we don't.
On this, like, show. Like, thinking about it now, there isn't a lot of people like, yeah, I was there, I can recall it, and this is what happened.
Yeah, 100%. Now, this is where I got to be a little cynical. He's anonymous. He might have read about it in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Maybe he got a buddy who knows Roby. Again, I'm being cynical. Maybe he knew this information and then could contrive a story out of it, not to fully deflate his eyewitness account, but it is fascinating. If it's true, you're totally right. I love the idea that we have somebody here who's like, I saw it. I saw everything that was reported, but he's coming down at a 45-degree angle. That's an interesting thing to note, you know?
Yeah. I just feel like a lot of mysteries would be solved. Not every mystery. A good chunk of them. Good sizable chunk. If people just stop trying to get in on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the people that came forward, it's like whether or not we trust their... But you know what I mean? Like, it's just like so many people come forward and want to claim everything or want to be a part of, the attention. And it's like, just come on, man. You're already muddying the waters. Can you not?
Right. And it's why the task force is keyed in on this. Sometimes we're inclined to just blindly believe and really go that route. Sometimes we're blindly cynical and don't want to believe and go that route. It's because of the flip-floppy nature of it all. It's whatever we're feeling in the moment. But it's hard. Like, I don't know what to believe anymore after 4 years of this podcast. So do I want to believe this guy? 100%. But do I know people been out there going, I'm the Zodiac? Yes.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's but yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think I thought you were going to go with this route. I think things would be solved if people got off their, the little phones, stop tweeting, start looking around.
That would suck if, like, how, like, you're watching movies with or just watching television with a friend or significant other, family member, whatever, and then something happens and either you miss it or they miss it because they're on their phone. That would just also suck because that's going to happen.
I missed a lot because I've been on my phone.
Yeah, because that's going to happen
but I got
too.
TV, I can go back.
True, but you can't go back in real life.
Oh man, they got to figure that out.
And people are going to miss that. Oh God, that'd be good and bad all at the same time.
Never thought I'd reference Click on this podcast, did you, Christian?
Yeah, here we are.
This might not be the first time, honestly. No, I'm with you though. Like, it's so awesome to have an eyewitness here, but oh my God, I'm just holding on. I've highlighted the next line in my outline. I'm sure Christian's looking at it. I've got something else that's so awesome to add to this. But before I say it, like, I am very excited that we have somebody that witnessed this, right? And somebody that reported it. It gives so much credibility to this mystery. It gives so much more intrigue. But with that said,
before you jump into that, just to close the loop on what you asked, it looks like that those cowl caps that you had asked about, looks like the majority of the cowls are made of a carbon fiber epoxy laminate.
okay.
They are stronger than original aluminum, but they weigh 30 to 40% less in most cases.
Ooh, dude, carbon fiber. What a beautiful material that is.
Yeah. Well, some buff mind in the science world is going to have to let us know if it floats or not. That'll be our next experiment. We just go out to the ocean, and chuck a piece of plane in there.
Does it float?
Yeah. We'll just do just one of every part, This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Privacy Hawk. If you haven't heard of them, Privacy Hawk is your all-in-one data management app designed to help you regain control of your personal information. It automatically manages who uses and shares your data, allowing you to opt out and delete your information from thousands of companies and data brokers. One of my favorite types of services is this right here. I use Privacy Hawk because it makes it so easy. There's very little effort on your end to get your information off the internet. I'm a very private person. I don't really want my phone number, email, social security number out there online. It's kind of spooky. And honestly, I just don't like all the scam mail and phone calls that I get because of it. So using their app, I can see that they've already protected me from 61 different brokers, and they're still in the process of taking me off 49. So I love the fact that I can just click, hey, yeah, remove me. And they let me know which of my family members are also exposed with their data out there. And if you want to go above and beyond, they also have identity protection, which does things like dark web searches. They look for data breaches and they give you alerts. They have identity theft, recovery insurance and restoration, change of address protection, social security number monitoring, live phone support, all these great things in order to give you peace of mind whenever it comes to online privacy. You can download the Privacy Hawk app right now on your cell phones and get a free privacy scan to see what you are up against. And if you decide, you can use our code REDWEB20 to get 20% off their platinum plan. That's REDWEB20 for 20% off. I really enjoy this app, and I think you will as well. Let's kill those scam calls, stop getting a bunch of junk mail, and save that data, baby, at Privacy Hawk. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are your self-care non-negotiables? If you're in the gym, it might be leg day, but if you're in real life, it might be therapy day. When your schedule is packed, it's easy to let your priorities slip. I let it happen all the time, if I'm honest. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. I've talked about this many times in the past, and I've been a little bit vulnerable. There are times where I desperately need therapy and I need support, another voice, somebody else to lean on when I'm going through my personal challenges, my struggles with anxiety. And BetterHelp has been there to be a good entry point to finding the right therapist and getting exposure to therapy. It can be a daunting task, and that's what I really enjoy about BetterHelp is that they make it approachable, easier to understand, and find the right person. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you need to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and they will get to know you a little bit, know your needs, and then match you with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists, importantly, at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day, all right, with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/redweb today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/redweb. Now, with all that said, the very same night as the disappearance, a photographer was in play. We got a man who saw stuff, but we also have a photographer named Roy Manifold, dope name by the way, who was taking photos at sunset over Cape Otway, which was directly in the flight path of Valentich. When Manifold developed the photos, he had no idea what he was going to capture that night. It's all film, as you know. So he's developing these photos later on, and he notices something bizarre. He says this, quote, "I observed this mark on the print that looked like a developing error or something. They mussed it up," I said. "Just a minute. That night I took that. It is exactly the night that that guy disappeared." So one photo lab took this photo from him and examined it. And they determined that the mark was not caused by dirt or a developing error or anything, but something else. Something was captured in the photo. And a second lab, which I appreciate getting two schools of thought here, a second lab analyzed the photo, but they found that it was indeed an error in the film or in the development in some way.
Ah, damn.
Yeah. And so we do have that photo for you now. I don't want to bury the lead. It's the third option. I gave you two photos of the plane and then the photo that he's referencing, but I'll let you describe it.
All right, let me take a look at this bad boy.
We got some tangible stuff today.
In a weird way, this is kind of a feel-good episode because we, it's like, oh, potential photographer, also like an eyewitness. Wow, what a treat to things we don't ever get in these mysteries.
I know.
Oh, look
so
at
what
that.
are you thinking?
I'm thinking I see like a plastic bag floating in the sky.
Is that Katy Perry?
It could be Katy Perry. And then it's a sunset, beautiful sunset. It just looked like a blob.
It does look like a blobage.
Maybe kind of like a parachute. Like it's just straight up blob with like a lighter blob next to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So we've got this like this little bean, like lima bean black spot in the clouds.
Yeah.
And it's a little darker than the foreground, which is underexposed, and it's supposed to be dark. It's sunset. Now, what would you describe to the left and right of that spot in the sky? What do you see with that?
To the left, like a weirdly stretched out cloud.
Okay, it's like a lighter cloud, I think.
It's like very, very light, but it also is like right above the sun. So the sun ray could be hitting it like real harsh.
True.
In terms of like how the lens is capturing the light. Yeah.
What about that thing to the right?
To the right.
It looks like a little. Is that green? That could be my colorblind coming in here, but
It just looks like more clouds and different shades of like.
I mean, like immediately to the right of it. There's like a little discoloration, like smaller bean.
Oh, to the right of the black bean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the lighter bean that I was calling out.
Oh, okay.
I was like, there's like a black blob and then like a lighter blob next to it. Kind of like you would think it'd be like a parachute.
It does look like that, actually.
Sideways.
Yeah. What's interesting about this photo is it's not as clear as I would have hoped. I mean, it's definitely a scan of a film photograph. It's a beautiful sunset. You have all these colors. But the blob itself, it's hard to understand what I'm looking at, how far away it is, what the relevant size is. And these, like, the discolorations to the left and right almost make me feel like, yeah, it might be some sort of development error. But the fact that it is the location, right, or at least along the flight path the same night, honestly, this might be a far reach, but Christian, do you know what time sunset in Melbourne on that date? That I feel like that's something we should be able to find.
That's a good question. Let me see.
Because from that, we can get a very rough approximation of when this photo was taken, because we know his last communications happened at 7:06 p.m. and he began his prep at 6:19 p.m. I mean, just based on time alone, he should have been near the island at around 7:06, because again, it was a 41-minute flight and he left around 6:20 something. So spatially, that's working out. I'm just curious on the time.
Looks like sunset on October 21st, 1978 in Melbourne specifically was at 6:42 p.m.
So this sun, by the time that these comms were happening, would have been below the horizon. And in this photo, it's touching the horizon, but definitely above it.
Yeah.
Now, we're not exactly in Melbourne. Cape Otway is just north of the island he's heading for and just to the southwest of Melbourne. So technically, you would see a little bit more sun, but not a whole lot more. It's close. It's definitely close. Anyway, curiosity is scratched. So again, we have two labs looking at this. I love it. I feel like I need a third to figure out what the majority analysis is. But upon further analysis of this photo, the first lab claimed that they could see a metallic object obscured behind the clouds. That's really why I wanted you to look with untainted eyes, Fredo, at this photo to see what you saw.
I can kind of see it, but I don't know. All the clouds look kind of stretched out, though.
Yeah. I'm struggling to see metallic object there. I see something.
I don't see metallic. I do see like a shade of the light from the sun. I can also see how they're like pointing that out specifically, because I do see it, but also at the same time, kind of just like, I also don't see it.
Yeah. I can see it when I know to look for it.
Yeah.
But if I looked at that, I don't know. My brain wants to fill in the gaps, you know? Now, what's interesting, as far as the UFO alien theory is concerned, there were multiple reports of unidentified lights in the sky in the following months. In fact, 5 days after the disappearance, Roby was radioed by another pilot who saw a light so bright and fast that he had to land his plane. However, according to the Herald Sun, the Mount Stromlo Observatory in Canberra claimed that at this time period, quote, the peak of meteorite stream with 10 to 15 sightings per hour achieved. All that is to say is that this was peak season for this particular meteorite stream, so it could have been, and maybe likely was, more meteorite activity than alien activity.
Damn it. I knew
Yep.
it. Yeah.
Foiled again.
Of course. It was just the right time for peak meteorite activity. Damn it.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be a theory if the poor guy got his plane smashed apart by a falling star?
Oh, yeah, actually. I mean,
You think of an ancient rock older than our solar system cascading through the endless bounds of space, only to slam into a poor man's airplane just trying to go get crawfish.
at what point do you go, that's just destiny?
I mean, yeah, wild. So that's the alien theory. I think it's fascinating. You know me, I love an alien story. I want so badly to believe.
Yeah, it's entertaining. It's always entertaining.
Yeah. This is my journey, by the way. Just Red Web is just at this point my journey to become a bulletproof believer, to have proof of ghosts and proof of aliens. I'm desperate for it. But another common theory for this case is that the lights that Valentich saw that night were nothing unusual, that he may have just been confused. There's a lot of, I don't want to say science, but a lot of flight mechanics that go into play here for this particular theory. So, though he was in training, Valentich was not an expert and could have easily misjudged the situation. Some theorize that Valentich was actually flying upside down. While odd as that sounds, it's totally possible, and that in addition to flying upside down, that the lights he saw were from his own reflection in the water before he then crashed into the ocean.
Oh, because he's been going through clouds.
Well, he has gone through a cloud before. He's flying at night. And what happens is, even on a clear night, is that when you're really far out there and you don't have any natural light, the horizon kind of disappears.
True.
The sky meets the ocean reflects the sky, and you can kind of feel like you're in this void of space and stars. It's wild, yeah.
I don't know if I like that. Maybe I don't become a pilot.
Yeah, keep those hours with the video games.
Yeah.
So I was very curious about the green light, and especially with this theory. So if this is his light being reflected off the ocean in some way, the green light could have been the Cessna's own navigation light. So Jillian was awesome enough to go find us a photo of the Cessna with the lights on, because I was very curious to see what light of this plane is green. I know that when you look at planes, there's a red light and a green light. Those tend to be on the different wings. Mm-hmm. There's the landing lights, but we have that photo for you if you want to take a look. It's the second image. We skipped over it.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, okay. There's the green light, the high beam light, the red light.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this another model plane? Is that a plane?
It looks like a model.
It looks like a little Cessna on a sidewalk.
That looks like someone's driveway
at a park or something, because it looks like there's a bench in the background.
Are we sure this wasn't like a Buzz Lightyear action figure flying a model plane?
Why do you guys keep giving me model plane images?
It's almost like just a way to goof with you. I mean, it's accurate enough. You see,
it is very accurate. Yeah, I see all the lights.
Position of the lights.
It totally gets across. I'm just size-wise, it looks like there's a bench in the background and it's someone's sidewalk.
Yeah. So there is a wrinkle with this. While as grounded as that might be, and we'll talk more about the kind of disorientation that would take. It's worth noting that the Cessna does have a gravity-fed fuel system, so it would not be possible for him to continuously fly upside down for very long. He would have to experience total engine failure. I know he experienced the engine spurting or coughing, but the engine would totally cut out. However, this does make me think about the guy who supposedly saw the plane flying downward at a 45-degree angle. You know, maybe this confusion theory is still in play, and he ended up at a 45-degree angle, which would mess with the engine a little bit, but he wouldn't know that he was going down, which could also play with the reflections. So we're not out of the theory yet. I do think that there's something here.
I really am subscribing to this theory because I have seen images and videos of how the horizon and all that just kind of blurs together.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see it. He does have a history and past of, I mean, who doesn't fail a test? But, you know, I can only work with the information I have. Like,
sure.
You know, he's failed a handful of tests. He's done some things that he shouldn't be doing. And so, I don't know. It just leaves a bigger room for error, right? As opposed to someone's like, they were one of the best pilot of the year or something like that. You know?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I I subscribe to it. I see how someone can get easily turned around.
Oh, yeah. And we'll build this theory out even more so. But yeah, we're laying the groundwork of not someone who's just completely incapable, but more so someone who is, they know enough to be out there flying, but are prone to some common errors that unless you have even deeper training, you might not know you have those errors, right? So
Right.
James McGahey, an astronomer and former U.S. Air Force pilot, along with skeptic Joe Nickel, who we've talked about a whole bunch, they theorized that the lights following Valentich were actually Venus, Mars, Mercury, and the star Antares. I've heard this kind of theory before, and I've always been a little flabbergasted as to how you can mistake, yes, the planets are brighter than stars and clearer. You can always see when you're looking at Mars, for example, because there's a bold and bright red light in the sky. But I've always been shocked at how somebody could kind of confuse that as something moving and being very close to you. But it's been mentioned enough that I have to believe it happens.
Yeah, I mean, being in the situation, right? That atmosphere kind of just sets the tone. And then from there, mind plays tricks.
100%. Especially since we know, and I don't think we've gotten to it yet here, but we know that he is a UFO enthusiast. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But so it could easily be part of what he's imagining and seeing. So further, to kind of build out more on this theory, he may have been confused and disoriented by the illusion of a tilted horizon, leading to what's called spatial disorientation. This can happen to pilots, especially when the sun starts to set. Usually during the day, pilots can obviously visually level the plane to the horizon because they can see it easily. But at night, your eyes can, as I mentioned, play a trick on you into thinking that you're actually aligned with the horizon when you're not, and vice versa. And this can lead to a pilot being uncertain of their altitude, especially if they're not totally familiar with their instruments or if the instruments are malfunctioning in any way. At night, as I said, the sky and the ocean can blend together and look as one, as if you're flying into a dark void, and your inner ear, combined with what your physical senses are doing, all kind of work together to ground you, but they're not used to this environment and can inadvertently disorient you with no visual cues to break that up, and that creates this very vivid hallucination, as it were, this illusory sensation that you don't know you're falling for. And so what might happen is you tilt the plane to reorient it to how your body feels, and this can lead a pilot like Valentich into what's called a graveyard spiral. There's the death spiral, and then there's a graveyard spiral.
Jesus.
It's similar but different. Yeah. So then in this graveyard spiral, he could see, I don't know, these lights, these planets, whatever they might be, and mistake those lights as orbiting him when actually he's the one spiraling slowly downward. So a graveyard spiral, to be more specific, occurs when a pilot is unable to accurately perceive the aircraft's orientation due to a lack of visual references and mistakenly thinks that the aircraft is climbing. So they overcorrect, which then worsens the descent, which tightens the spiral, resulting in a gradual, continuous descent. So while they think they're climbing and correcting for it, they're actually pushing down more and tilting in more. You end up in this spiral, and eventually the G-forces could have, in this spiral, kind of affected the engine, which caused the sputtering and the coughing symptoms, and then ultimately your altitude hits zero, and unfortunately, in this case, you would probably perish.
That is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, damn, dude.
And a death spiral is similar, but very difficult once you're in it to actually maneuver your plane out of it. It seems like, oh, just don't roll, but you end up caught by the physics. I don't remember all the aerophysics that go into it. It's been too many years, but I do know that it's you need to catch it early, because the longer you let it go, the more difficult it gets to pull out of it. And it's something you need to be aware of. Yeah. In fact, the pilot that was teaching us flight test put us in one just so he could show us how you don't even know you're in it.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, at least you know how to fly, because I'm up here puking my brains out back here. Because, well, we were also goofing around. We were pulling 0 Gs and stuff, but don't tell anybody that.
You gotta have fun with it.
You gotta have fun when you're playing with death spirals.
Put me in a death spiral. Let me go experience the fun parts of flying.
Yeah. So, like I said, really grounded in physical science and experience from other pilots. And this could explain a lot of what happened. It doesn't necessarily explain maybe the lights in totality, but there are a few theories that attempt to address that. Now, what's interesting is that Roby himself, again, did not believe that Valentich was confused and his reasoning was that no debris and no oil had been seen or found, so he doesn't think that he totally crashed, and he also told the Herald Sun that Valentich sounded genuine when talking to him about what he was seeing that night. So I think that Roby takes it at face value that he saw something else, and whatever that something was the thing that resulted in his disappearance. Either way, as I mentioned before, Valentich was a UFO enthusiast, and this may have influenced maybe what he saw. The lights could have been misinterpreted as something extraterrestrial, and it could have put a fear in him, right? We'll talk a little bit more about this enthusiasm for UFOs in the next theory, but either way, whether he was afraid or not, it could have been a full distraction, which could have added to the graveyard spiral situation of it all. And I don't know, could have just been a conflation of moments.
Yeah, it's just, it's all just situations that are just very difficult to not be disoriented.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you just kind of, I don't know, you get caught in it, man. It's just a tough situation to be in when you can't even tell what's up and down, what's real, what's not real.
Dude, I can't even imagine, because you also don't even know. You're just
Right.
like, you think you're popping along, but you know what's interesting is following Valentich's disappearance. You know, we've talked a lot about Bermuda Triangle. We did a whole episode on that. There are many triangles all over the world. Christian, did we ever talk about the Michigan Triangle? Was that something, it was part of a case, but I don't know if we ever talked about it specifically.
We've talked a lot about it internally about doing an episode on it, but we've never done an episode specifically focused on it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Because I know there was a man that disappeared up in Michigan, and that was part of the triangle. But either way, triangles are all over the world. Hot spots for things disappearing, unexplained technological mishaps. Of course, we just did the Zone of Silence, which can kind of fall into that camp. But following Valentich's disappearance, numerous other shipwrecks and disappearances happened in this area, and the concept of the Bass Strait Triangle started to become popular. Of course, it's a very busy, very popular commercial shipping lane. A lot happens going in and out of Melbourne, so maybe it's just with more traffic comes more accidents, but it is theorized that some sort of supernatural force is happening out there to create these crashes and disappearances.
Oof. I just would like to stay far away from one.
Yeah. So the final theory is interesting. It has been argued that Valentich may have staged his disappearance. The main foundation behind this theory are the facts that we mentioned earlier. The plane was in working condition, the flight was short, and the plane had plenty of fuel. So, in fact, it was ample enough to maybe go somewhere else. No one knows exactly why Valentich intended to fly to King Island in the first place, and this little mystery itself opens the door to theorists attempting to, as we know, fill the gap in our knowledge. What's interesting is that in the days before his flight, it's so fascinating, Valentich told his girlfriend about his concerns over being abducted by aliens one day. He's literally seeding the idea.
Yeah. That's the hard part, where it's like, I believe in aliens, because then you're looking for it.
His father even confirmed that he was often worried about encountering aliens while flying. So again, I'm inclined to add a little bit of that into the previous theory. And as he's spiraling, as these physics are unfolding, he's seeing something that he doesn't fully understand, and his brain is a lot more inclined to say aliens than it is to, and he's then paying attention upward more than he is on his instruments, and it might have just created a very unfortunate circumstance. However, coming back to the idea of a staged disappearance, I don't know exactly the motive in the theory. It's just been theorized that maybe he staged his disappearance, period. But some theorize that this could have been an attempt to plant the seeds that would make his disappearance look less like an accident and more like a UFO abduction, to kind of cover his tracks for him to then disappear somewhere else.
Did he have any reason to?
Not that I'm aware of. Christian, I'm curious in any of the readings that you had, if you could find a motive, because that's kind of what I noted in the notes, is that he could have used this UFO abduction story as a plan to kind of cover whatever ulterior motives he had, but I just don't know what they might be.
Yeah, nothing that I could find either. It was just trying to explain it, but not really having much to support the theory. Yeah, like not a lot of info about his actions in the days before or any possible motives or anything like that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think it's an interesting theory. It's very intriguing, if nothing else, a great story, right? A lot of these theories that we talk about on this show end up being very good stories, but to me, it opens up more questions than answers. So
same.
With that alone, I'm kind of like, I don't know.
I mean, I do understand. Like, it's crossed my mind, you know? But I gotta have some reason to, other than just like, oh, they're in trouble. It's because we think it. Not that there's anything behind it.
You could really go wild with it when you start to build theories, which is why I always seek grounded, like, how does this work? Why is the theory proposed? Because I could also say the space-time continuum ripped us under and off he disappeared and then it collapsed again. You know, the Langoliers got him. You could say a lot and they're all interesting, but I'm always looking for like, okay, well, what makes you say that? What makes you fill the gap with this theory?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the disappearance of Frederick Valentich.
An eerie one.
Yeah. So how do you feel on theories? Probably, I mean, confusion.
I still subscribe to, again, he got hit with a situation that was very hard to deal with, even for the most experienced pilots. And that's what got him in the end. And I think his plane went down in the open sea. And yeah, there's just no way to find him at that point. Where did he go down? How far? How deep? Like, yeah.
It's just unfortunate, you know? And it can happen to, like you said, even seasoned pilots. It's wild out there flying over the ocean. I mean, you've done it, I know. And you and I are about to do it again in September. But when you're flying at night and you look at the little radar on the TV that shows you where the plane's at, and you are over the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and when the map is centered on you, you don't see land, it's a little freaky.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Yep. So
and you look out the window, you don't see nothing. And so to be in a little four-seater, I mean, yes, it's not middle of the ocean, but it's still like, it's out there. Heebie-jeebies, man.
Oof, it's a little eerie. And again, like you said, we are going to be jumping on a plane.
Just don't think about it.
Thank God you did us the service of doing this episode with enough leeway for me to kind of not be as frightened.
Yeah. Well, 50% of planes go disappearing. So you know what I'm saying? Like,
it's wild out there. Statistic is correct.
I just feel like that's wrong.
I just feel like that's absolutely not right.
That's just a lie. Well, I'll never say. But this has been the disappearance of Frederick Valentich. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, Task Force, the number one way to support us, you can go to store.redwebpod.com. It 100% supports us. But patreon.com/redweb is the best way to allow us to keep doing what we do as an independent company. And with that, we offer a lot of little bonus things, looks behind the scenes. We offer research outlines, our exclusive bonus podcast, as you know, about movies. We love horror movies, so we talk about them on that show called Movie Club, and a bunch of other things. But right now, especially for August, and exclusively for Patreon members, we have a discount code for the store. So as a way to thank you guys for supporting us in these initial couple months and getting us back on our feet. It's been as stressful as it's been exciting. And so we're just very grateful that you guys have been so tremendous and supported us thus far.
Thank you. We can't do it without you guys. And it's really cool to be back and to have the support from everyone and to do this on our own.
Yeah, it really is. And when I snuck launched the store a little early for our Patreon members, and I was hanging out in the Discord, and I almost shed a little tear. I got to be honest, like just seeing everybody get so hyped and so excited, and also just to see the ongoing discussions and theories and suggestions happening in the Discord. It warms the cockles of my heart, they say. I don't know what that means. Someday I might look it up, but but seriously, like
what of your what?
Okay, fine, I'll look it up now. An edible burrowing bivalve mollusk with a strong ribbed shell, or a small shallow boat. Who's been saying cockle all these years?
Yeah. What the
all right, well, okay, you guys haven't been warming my shells and boats. You've been warming my heart, and I'm grateful for it. But with that said, Fredo, I will see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.